Hey, everybody, welcome back. Happy Skews Day to you. It is January 10th, 2023. Where does the time go? I'm Trae Crowder. I'm thrilled to be back alongside Mark Agee. What's up, Mark?
What's up, Trey? You and I have spoken in the year 2023. We did the Patreon and we hung out and watched football Saturday night, to your chagrin. But
Hmm.
as
Yeah.
far as the main show, it's first time we talked in 2023. And welcome to the future, buddy.
Yeah. Glad to
We're
be
living
here.
in it.
It's not great, but, still glad to be here, I guess. I had a
It's
bit
some,
for a while about how that was like I was so optimistic for the future, like not just for me personally, but for everything when I was a kid. Like 2020 was like the future to me, and I thought we'd have all this cool shit and everything by then, and just how much of a bummer things have turned out to be. We've got some cool shit, but
yeah.
not enough and not as cool as I'd hoped.
We got Roombas and we got self-driving cars that spontaneously crash, and
Yeah.
they got we did. My wife insisted we stayed at a friend's house and we're in Florida, and they had an Alexa and she thought it was cool, so we got an Alexa. So I got one of those fucking cop devices in my house now, recording everything I say. So there it is. I mean, it's nice to be able to, hey, set a reminder so I don't have to remember to walk my dog or whatever,
So,
watch the
a
clock.
brief anecdote about Alexa. I hardly ever use mine, but I'll use it to play music sometimes. Yesterday, I was making lunch and I felt like listening to the National because it's raining and I'm a white man.
Mhm.
So, but I love the National. But anyway, they got this song, Corinne at the liquor store. And I was like, Alexa, play Corinne at the liquor store. Nothing. And I was like, Alexa, play Corinne at the liquor store. And then she said, playing Karen at the liquor store. And I got as pissed off as if a person had corrected me on something that I knew was correct about. You know what I mean? Like somebody corrects
Yeah.
you when you know that you're not wrong. I got that mad, but at a robot. I literally was like, that's not right. They say it in the song just as if she can hear me or cares or would respond. But yeah, anyway, that happened
Yeah.
yesterday.
I look forward to doing the same. Robots are our doctors, and you're like, no, I don't need this
Yeah.
medicine. I need a different. You're like, yeah, okay. Well, speaking of living in the future, and some news hit and some news not, I think this is good news. Katie Porter announced today she's going to run against Dianne Feinstein in the Senate. She's going to the Senate primary in 2024. We don't know if Dianne Feinstein is going to
Right.
run. Dianne
Surely not, right?
Dianne is well documented to have pretty bad dementia. She should not be in the Senate currently, much less in 4 years when she'll be 90 fucking years old. But
Yeah.
everyone got mad at her, and this reminds me of like the 2016 primary, and people all thought that Bernie was like impertinent to run against Hillary. And
Right.
however you feel
Yeah.
about which one's a better candidate, or whatever. My point is, like, it's a democracy, and everybody gets to run, and you make your case, and we get to vote. Now, I think if Feinstein doesn't run, Adam Schiff is supposedly going to run. I imagine Feinstein will endorse Schiff because she's butthurt about Katie Porter doing this. But my thing is, like, I'm a California voter. I'll vote. It's fine. Whoever wants to run. Every lunatic runs in California elections. I can actually vote for a sane congressman. And Katie Porter, I know Matt was pointing out in the pre-show that there was a leaked text message recently about maybe Porter being a shit boss to her staff or whatever. And he's like, he thinks it's the California Democratic machine trying to smack her down. But anyway, she hits for Matt because she's from rural Iowa and she wrote her senior thesis on like, corporatization being bad for farming, or I forgot what Matt told me. It's something like that. So
Yeah.
she hits for Matt. So I look forward
Uh,
to the campaign.
yeah,
Um,
I think like it's like you said, so it seems like you think it's a deal where like comparing it to the 2016 election, like Adam Schiff is the Hillary, and they think Katie Porter's being the Bernie. Like the establishment's
yeah.
like, no, it's supposed to be his turn. He's earned it. You wait your turn.
Hmm.
That's not how things work around here. Also, you're too progressive for us or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's why they're pissed. Because it cannot be that they're pissed about the Feinstein part. I wouldn't think, given that she's going to be 90 years old. But the Schiff part kind of makes sense to me. I think it's dumb, but I mean, we've
Hmm.
seen them do stuff like that before, as you pointed out. So I buy it.
Who knows? You never figure out what these people are up to or how they think. But anyway, if you can't win, if you can't beat her in an election, then then eat shit. I don't know what to say.
Right.
Make your case and we'll vote. Some wild shit happened in Brazil, and this does connect to
Mhm.
American politics because Steve Bannon and an American congressman are involved. But yeah, they had their own January 6th over the weekend. It was both bigger and worse and better planned and had a better chance of succeeding, except for the fact the government is actually prepared to deal with this shit, unlike ours. But I want to show this video if Matt has it, if you wouldn't get a vibe for how fucking big this was.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know, you just convert all that green and yellow to red, white, and blue, and it's
Mhm.
very very familiar scene. I mean, it is anyway, but you know what I'm saying. But so wasn't it? Was it on the 8th? Is that when they did it? Two days ago? Is that right? Or was it the
Sound
7th? When was it?
sounds right. It was over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. I forget
But
exactly which. Yeah.
not the actual 6th, right?
Right. Right. But like
Is there a
Steve.
reason for that? It seems like an odd choice to me to do it so close to the anniversary, but not like on the
Yeah.
dot.
Also, Lula was sworn in a couple of days before the new president slash former president, and like Brazilian politics is crazy. Lula was literally in prison until like a year or two ago. He made sort of a trumped up thing called the car wash. It doesn't matter, whatever. But Lula's an actual left winger. Tucker has been a shitbag. He called the Brazilian election rigged. So did Elon. An American congressman that I mentioned before, I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now, but he's now the chairman of a committee in the new House. He flew to Brazil in the last month or two to help them plan this. Steve Bannon helped plan it. This was a huge operation. They shut down freeways. And the funny part was they took over Congress, Supreme Court, all that shit. And then what they were trying to do, because they all, including Jair Bolsonaro, the last president, idealized the military dictatorship that ruled from the 60s through 1985. And what they were hoping to do was to instigate a military response. The military would take over the government, and they would have their dictatorship back, and they could put Jair Bolsonaro back in charge. But the military rolled in, they all clapped, and then the military arrested them all.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
funny how that works.
yeah, and South American governments are used to the only attempted coup attempts, so like they arrested them all on the spot, as opposed to our government, once everybody let everybody go home, and then gradually started trying to round them up because they treated it like it wasn't a big deal. And I don't know if Jair is going to be extradited. He's here apparently on an A1 visa, which is for state leaders.
Yeah.
He's in Orlando. Corey and I talked about it last week. He's staying in Orlando at the house of an MMA fighter,
Mhm.
and in a bedroom that's decorated with all Minions gear.
Yeah.
Like he ate at a KFC. He got caught in video walking around a Publix. Shout out to Publix, great grocery store. And then he had to check into a hospital with a stomach ailment. I don't know if that's a KFC related or ongoing, but he's been in the hospital constantly for the past few years. He's had COVID at least 3 times that I know about. All were serious cases because he refused to get vaccinated. Um, the Minions thing, I don't know
Mhm.
if it's purposeful or not, because the left wing media in Brazil started calling his supporters Bolsa Minions, because they
Mhm.
wear, Proud Boys in America, their gear is like black and yellow Sperry gear. Like
Yeah.
that's their uniform. The uniform for Bolsonaro supporters is basically a Brazilian soccer jersey. So they're dressed in all yellow with the green, like you pointed out before, and people calling them minions. But like it, as I don't know if they've adopted it like Trump supporters did deplorals.
Right.
So
It
I don't.
seems like it surely has to be something. I mean, unless that MMA fighter is just super into minions, I guess. What a like wild and unpredictable cultural trajectory the minions have had. You know what I mean? From those cutesy little kid movies. And they got in America for a while, it was like everybody's drunk aunt on Facebook was making memes with minions and
Uh,
stuff about drinking wine or whatever, but there's just a minion there for some reason. And now they're the face of the fascist right wing movement in Brazil apparently, and it's just like, but the creators didn't foresee any of that shit happening.
yeah. Anyway, my hope is that they ship Jair back to Brazil to let them have whatever they're saying justice, because he came here to flee prosecution. And I want to see at least one country, punish leaders of a coup for a coup attempt. Um, uh, One last thing before we get to the show. So last week, Corey and I talked about there was a weird right wing tampon company that's like saying they won't sell to trans people. And me and Corey were joking about it. And I made the point that trans women, they're born men, they don't menstruate. And we were joking about it. And a viewer reached out by the name of Farrellicious, happens to be a trans man. The dude made a good point. He's like, well, it's actually us they're saying they won't sell to, right?
Right.
So like, and he also made the point, which was interesting, that I hadn't thought about. And he was very kind about it, by the way, in the way he was like correcting me is the wrong word, but he just raising this point. But like that, because the right's obsessed with trans women, because they're the ones they see as the threats because they're the ones that are
Right.
concerned about because they see them as men, and men are
Right.
predators. They're the ones
Right.
that worry about going into the bathrooms, and they're the ones who like they think it's unfair to compete in like the swim meets or whatever. Trans men are sort of erased because they're not as the focal point of the
Yeah.
the hatred. And I was like, oh shit, I fell victim. I picture a trans person, I picture a trans woman because I've also become propagandized by the right wing hate machine. So anyway, I don't think it's points that I wish we were as focused on by the hate machine, but it is interesting how this shit manifests itself. So anyway, shout out to Farrellicious. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. Because any kind of gay, queer, trans man, or it would be a trans woman, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
The point you were just making, like they're the ones that they're all groomers and pedophiles and stuff. Like they're the ones that they're worried about because, like you said, it's wild that a lot of men are acknowledging that men are dangerous, but not.
Yeah.
But they're like not the good kind, only the weird kind. That's why we're so worried about them. The different
Yeah.
kinds, they are dangerous. But when women talk about being afraid to walk to their car alone or whatever, they're like, that's overblown. What are you doing
Right.
outside anyway? But all right, well, let's get into it. With us as always is producer Matt. This is Weekly Skews. Before we continue, I, of course, would like to remind you of a couple quick things. Number one, if you'd like to see me perform live, go to TraeCrowder.com. Get your tickets. I got a bunch of dates coming up in 2023, and I'm adding more all the time. I'll be here in LA on the 19th, and then after that, Atlanta and a big Florida run. So I'm getting deep in it at the end of this month. I'm looking forward to it, and a lot more after that. So yeah, TraeCrowder.com. Get your tickets. Number two, if you enjoy this program and would like to show your support, you can do so by signing up on Patreon. $5 a month gets you access to full-length bonus episodes like the one we just did last week on the many lies of George Santos. We're enjoying it. We hope you'll consider going to weeklyskews.com/more, or you can just go on Patreon and look me up. Either way works. Sign up on there. Get some more skews in your life and support the show in the process. Now, as for the show tonight, we've all long known that conservatives hate reading. Like most of the things they hate, they find it difficult and upsetting. But now they're coming for the written word with a renewed focus as more and more highly coordinated attempts to ban books, and in some cases, entire libraries, are gaining steam around this country. Happy New Year, y'all. We'll talk about that a little later. But first, as always, we begin with the Daily Dumbass. Matt, graphic, please. Tonight's DD, M&M's for being fat and gay, apparently. At least according to Tucker Carlson, I guess. Hit it, man.
Woke M&M's have returned. The green M&M got her boots back, but apparently is now a lesbian, maybe. And there's also a plus-sized, obese purple M&M. So we're going to cover that, of course, because that's what we do.
Yes, it is what you do. So that's a peanut M&M.
Right. Well, it's also like all M&Ms are round. Like that's the shape that they have. How are you supposed to tell when there's a fat M&M? Like they're rotund or oblong or whatever, some combination thereof. But yeah, like you said, that's just, you got the regular M&Ms. That's a peanut. Does that M&M look any different than the yellow one that they've always had? He's peanut, right?
I sometimes I can't figure out like they literally had a screen grab, like it was like M&M's Go Woke was the title of the segment. The Mars Candy Company has not gone woke. It's also they're always they talk about M&M's like 3 times a week because they were mad
Right.
before when they got rid of the M&M green M&M sexy boots. Now they're excited the boots are back, but because she's sexy again, but also she's a lesbian. But they're mad about that. But like, there's one thing straight men have always agreed on is that lesbians are sexy. So I don't really know what
Right.
they're actually talking about. But like they'd rather talk about anything with the actual news. Like Jesus Christ, just don't buy the candy if you don't want it. But M&M's hit, so
Well,
whatever.
it's also like, I mean, as we've talked about over and over again, yeah, you said they'd rather talk about anything than the actual news, but it's also like they subsist on outrage and stuff, but they don't really have that many things to like genuinely be outraged about. So they're always having to come up with these new, points of their wrath. And, they're grasping at straws at this point with the woke candy, but it's not just the candy. No, Batman's Rogue Gallery is going woke as well, I guess. We got that tweet, Matt, about the joke. Or yeah, here we go. This is Fox News headline: grotesque new Batman story features the Joker becoming pregnant and giving birth to a handsome baby.
Yeah, they did hours on this yesterday, and the funny part about it is that the comic itself, the graphic novel or whatever you want to call it. Sorry if I'm insulting graphic novel fans. I'm not one of you, but go with God. So the Joker apparently gets cursed by like a witch or a warlock or something, and the part of the curse is he becomes pregnant and then gives birth to. So it has nothing to do with like woke ideology or trans stuff. It's just a fucking comic book. And
Yeah,
also,
they're wild.
if there is any sort of takeaway from it, it's a curse that the Joker turns into a woman. So it would seem
Right.
the opposite of the thing they're mad about. But anyway, I don't think that's what the point they were trying to make. I don't think they're trying to make any point other than to make a cool comic book. But like, if the Joker getting pregnant is woke, what was the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Junior? Because he gets
Right.
pregnant at that, right?
Yeah, call the governor woke. Why don't you? But
Was it where are Papaws mad about that? Was that a thing?
no. Well, it's like also, I mean, I feel like, I've brought it up a million times. We had drag shows when I was in high school or whatever. And also
Mhm.
like it used to be the height of comedy for a dude to put a dress on, you know what I mean? Because that's how simple and dumb we all were. But yeah, it's like that type of thing happened all the time and no one ever felt threatened by it. And it's like at some point they found out that like there are actual trans people who exist and that's weird to them or whatever. they're upset by that. And so now it's taken on this whole new flavor of hateful distaste.
My when I was home over the holidays, my aunt Kim, she dug up a photo of my grandfather, Daddy Bucks, what we called him, and he was dressed in drag for a drag beauty pageant to raise money for the volunteer fire department. And
Right.
honestly, one, amazing legs, all right.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted a picture with a joke about it and told everybody shut the fuck up about drag stuff because it's my grandfather doing it. And some guy, dickhead, responded to me like, "Oh, well, did he identify as a woman when he did it though?" And I didn't. I don't want to. I don't like getting an internet fight, so I didn't bother with it. But it was like, well, I don't know. First of all, but either way, mind your own fucking business.
Right.
Mind your fucking business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's different types of, and I'm not going to get into breaking it all down because I would fuck something up too. But like, there's different types of men who either identify or dress up as, or some combination thereof, or whatever of, as a woman, you know what I'm saying? It's not like these people like specify or get into the details when they say see a dude in a dress anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Uh-huh.
it's just bad now. Like they don't stop to ask him like, what is the context in which you're doing this? And also, how do you identify personally? I need to know before I can decide whether or not to hate you. They just default right to hate and fear.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
didn't
It's
used to be
like,
like that.
I mean, it's not my community, but you know how like Eskimos have 1,000 words for snow. Like you would like. I don't know if anybody knows this, but like rednecks and hillbillies are not the same thing, and they kind of hate each other. Like Drew has a whole explanation of where like rednecks have money and they have big trucks. Rednecks were like descendants of people that like own people. Hillbillies were poor and lived in the mountains, and they're good at dancing, and they hate the people with big trucks. It's like if you're not in communities, this stuff seems imperceivable to you. But anyway, it's not just like anyway, it's yeah, whatever.
Just for the record, Drew grew up further in East Tennessee, and I always told him, we talked about it, like I grew up not that far to the west. I was on the eastern part of Middle Tennessee, and people in my hometown who were very poor and poverty stricken all identified as rednecks rather than hillbillies. And so, yeah, it like differs depending on, town to town and state to state and shit, what either of those words mean.
Yeah.
And I'll use them interchangeably at this point for myself, I'm saying. And, Drew can kiss my ass if he don't like it, Mark. How about that? So I don't know why I'm getting mad at Drew now. It's okay.
But let me ask you this, Trae. Can you clog dance?
No, I cannot.
Okay, redneck.
Okay. Do you know how to clog?
No.
You're from Appalachia, right? You're from that part
like
of
2 hours from
Virginia.
the foothills. Yeah, we're pretty
Okay.
like yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
then you're about as close to it as I am, really, because that's about how far I am too.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Our first honorable mention: large brain Marge for thinking she could fuck with NWA. That's right. She's been copyright stricken for a video she posted of herself just feeling herself and looking super cool and badass in her mind while walking through the halls of Congress. And the background music she chose for that was Still DRE by Dr. Dre, which is like, that's one of the hardest going beats of all time. But I don't know who the fuck she thinks she is doing that. And then it went on from there.
Yeah, it was a couple things are funny about it. I wish we could show you the video, but we will get hit with a copyright
Right. Exactly.
takedown.
Yeah.
Ours will be automatic. Dr. Dre actually request to get taken down with her, but like it was funny because the caption she put on it was "You can't stop what's coming," meaning whatever her investigation is the Biden crime family or whatever. But under "You can't stop what's coming" was a blank thing saying it's been taken down, which is like, yeah, Dr. Dre, stop what's coming, baby.
It got stopped. Yeah.
Anyway, then her response was funny. She got Dr. Dre put out a pretty forceful letter about how she's a divisive and hateful person. She can't use his music, and she was like, "Well, I would never use your lyrics. I just like the chord progression, but because your lyrics are so anti-police and misogynistic, it's like, man." These people spent the whole decade of the '90s trying to make rap illegal. Now they want the coolness that comes from a fucking beat from 2001.
Right. Well, and it's also like, it's like just trying to, I don't know, with a straight face being like, just so you know, I fundamentally disagree with this awesome song that I just used for my own promo video. Like, yeah, I used it, but I just want you to know, I think it's disgusting.
Yeah. But the beat goes. The chord progression goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, that is undeniable for sure. But yeah, she's just she's something else, man.
Yeah, her journey is fascinating to me because like a year or two ago, it was like, why are you raising her profile? Why are you like, why is this lady get so much airtime? Stop retweeting her. But she's pretty much made herself into the face of the party, and the right-wing propaganda machine has completely rehabilitated her. Like, here's her going on Howie Kurtz on Fox News to talk about how. Anyway, I'll let it play out. You can see.
Yeah, and just to deal with one bit of history, the Democrats stripped you of your community assignments after you were elected. That was raw politics. But in fairness, didn't you also say around that period that you had been a follower of QAnon conspiracy theories and you had rethought this and you were no longer influenced by the group?
Well, like a lot of people today, I had easily gotten sucked into some things I'd seen on the internet, but that was dealt with quickly early on. I never campaigned on those things. That was not something I believed in. That's not what I ran for Congress on. So those are so far in the past.
All right. You tweeted, I guess, yeah.
All right. So she's getting, because she took McCarthy's side, right? She's getting the morning show rehabilitation to her treatment, while like Lauren Boebert's getting roasted to death, right? They're actively making her the face of the party. And she's saying, I didn't run on QAnon. To the degree that's true, which it isn't. The way she raised her profile was harassing AOC and Parkland shooting survivors on Facebook videos. All right. So the way she did make her name, even by her own story, is not good. So anyway,
I mean, not that I'm surprised by it, but it's wild to me that they seem to be like really hitching their wagon to the Marge train. Do you know what I mean? Like, because she did the right thing politically from their perspective. So now they're going to like prop her up. Like, it just seems like that's something you might end up regretting, considering every other thing about how she's always conducted herself. But then on the other hand, I guess it's like, that's sort of just their whole brand now, I guess. So why not?
Look, they're very well coordinated and well thought out and very effective propaganda network. But I don't like, they're basically grooming her to be Trump's vice presidential nominee. And I think she's incredibly toxic to like 65% of Americans.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to work, but more power to you. But while we're talking about Dre, in other politics, hip hop news, his headline killed me. Rap god Bernie Sanders appears on a new hip hop album from Minnesota State Representative Maria Issa. The candidate's name is Maria Issa. State rep's name is Maria Issa Perez Vega. Her rap name's Maria Issa. And so he appears in like, the opening track to her album, which is a little skit or whatever. And it's a recording of Bernie telling her, people respond to you a lot more than these 90-year-old guys. don't be afraid, he says. If somebody says something to you, young lady, this is not good decorum, tell them to go fuck themselves.
Pretty gangster.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
gangster quote from old Bernie there.
So I'd never heard of her music. I went and checked it out. She got some stuff on YouTube. But again, her rap name is Maria YouTube and Maria Issa, and we can't play it again for copyright reasons. But I will say I did like her music, and the track I specifically recommend is called Coco. So check that out if you want to hear some decent Latin hip hop.
It's certainly preferable to the 10-year-old conservative Christian rapper that I saw trending the other day.
Yeah, I saw that kid. His dad's apparently a Christian right MAGA rapper, and it's like, yeah, he was rapping QAnon nonsense, and like, okay, who's the groomer here?
Who's indoctrinating people? Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be talking. That's what we're going to be talking about a lot more later, indoctrination and the idea of that and everything. And yeah, that's a good example to keep in mind as we start talking about the shit they're flipping out about later. But first, quickly, one last honorable mention for Daily Dumbass. Hitler, for not realizing that really we're all Jewish on the inside, or something like that. This is George Santos.
You can skip like 2/3 of the way through this video, Matt. I forgot to give it a timestamp. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Go down towards the end.
Yeah,
that's probably okay right there.
Yeah.
Over again. They converted to Catholicism, had their kids, raised them Catholic. And I'm Catholic, but that's pretty much little history of my family into Judaism, which I believe we're all Jewish at the end, because Jesus Christ is Jewish. And if you believe in Jesus, and we're all brothers in Christ, I mean, I don't want to get too religious here, but.
All right. So
get too religious.
This is him from like a couple years ago appearing on a public access. So like this guy publicly said he was Catholic here, then went back and said he was Jewish later, and assumed no one would find this. But
right.
This guy is fascinating to me, and we did a whole episode on Santos on the Patreon, so I don't want to go. But a couple small updates. This headline is from yesterday. We were duped how George Santos raised money from wealthy GOP donors while lying about his resume. So the funny thing to me about this is that the real victims here are GOP donors. but the mechanism for this killed me. A staffer in his campaign impersonated Kevin McCarthy's chief of staff to get donations.
It's so wild. Like you said, we did a whole Patreon episode about this guy, and the thing I kept coming back to is what you just said a minute ago. Just that idea behind, like, he didn't think anybody would ever see or hear or find out about any of this. Like, that's the craziest part, dude. In a position of that much scrutiny and everything, like, you're gonna get caught when you're this outrageous with your lying. You know, ask Herschel Walker about it. But he started with a lower profile than Herschel Walker. But of course, people are figuring it out now, and it's wild, man. It's brazen.
Yeah, wealthy donors received calls and emails from a man who said he was Dan Meyer, McCarthy's chief of staff, during both. Santos ran in 2020. He just lost, but during both 20. So this ruse lasted two election cycles over 2.5 years. But the guy's name was actually Sam Meal, and he worked for Santos raising money. And so if he ends up in jail for defrauding Republican donors, that's going to be the funniest way to do it. It reminds me of like how Pharma Bro, Martin Shkreli, how raising a price of a children's cancer drug was not a crime, right? Killing kids wasn't. But what he ended up in prison for was defrauding investors on deals where he made them money because he invested in stuff that he wasn't supposed to invest, that he lied to them about. So like that would be probably the funniest way for this to go about. But another thing that killed me about this guy, so that the House passed the new set of rules to govern the chamber, and we talked about how they're going to like gut the ethics committee and defund it and cripple the Office of Congressional Ethics' ability to investigate members of Congress for potential wrongdoing. Quote, I think it's fantastic, Republican Rep. George Santos of New York said.
That whole thing is another good example of just like, again, how brazen this shit is. Like, it's just absolutely shameless to me. You know, just openly, first thing we got to do, we got to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, because, you know, otherwise, how are we going to do all this unethical shit? We're really, you know, it's smart. Like, it's the obvious solution. Right. If you're going to be super unethical, you can't have an Office of Ethics walking around. So, we're going to blow that up and then get to work. And it's like, it's just all public like that. It's not like behind closed doors shit. They're just like, that's what we're going to do.
We talked about this before, but they're also the House passed legislation. It won't pass the Senate, of course, in order to like rescind IRS funding for next year. But so between the ethics, Congressional Ethics Office and IRS, they're continually defunding their cops, baby. They love it.
Yep. But that's not the only thing they're going after, as we referenced up top. Books, Mark, on the chopping block, or at least a good number of them are. This is like the new, and I'm not saying they're not still doing this too, but like how they seem to rally around going to school boards and fucking all that up, for a while there.
Yeah.
Again, probably still doing it now. It's the library. The library is next on their list, evidently.
Yeah, I want to just to frame this. This isn't one of our stories about everything's collapsing. This is a story about what a small, motivated group of psychos can accomplish if other people don't get involved. So this is more of like,
Right.
hey, check out what's going on in your local library, and maybe go to a library board meeting and check out what's going on. All right, but this is about. I'm gonna read from this headline: the horrifying world of libraries. So how do you feel about? I love libraries as a kid, man. My mom, like when we went to town, my mom had errands to run, or she had to go and like work on an off day. She would drop us off at the library to like read books and hang out. Right? It was like free daycare, which I know librarians hate, but yeah.
No, dude, the library was huge for me in my formative years. My first like job, it was a job, but it was super part-time. But I was a tutor in a program at the library. So every day after school, I'd go to the library and tutor younger kids. And also in my hometown, like internet, was not prevalent, especially any kind of remotely high speed internet. So like we'd go and get on the computers at the library all the time and play, RuneScape and shit like that. But like we were always at the library. I had also had one of my first sexual experiences at the library. That's too much information, but yeah. So the library was like, that was my shit, dude. I love the library.
It's funny you bring up the sexual experience thing because it's true for me too, except I was alone. So because like one of the things I like to do at the library, they had women's magazines there and had sex tips and stuff and like advice columns. I would read those, and I found them very interesting as part of my, when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old, as part of my, sexual awakening, as it were. But like, it's weird when you talk about all this grooming and moral panic about like pornography at the library. It's like, I mean, I turned out mostly fine, and I got boners in the library, so I don't know what I was like worried about.
No, dude, between the computers and stuff, we used to all hang out at the library all the time. Me and my buddies would and librarians were cool with this, like the sort of yard adjacent to the library. Like we'd play like pick up football games out there and stuff like that. Like we hung out and kicked it at the library all the time when I was in high school. Loved it.
I love the library. It's a place. It's a socialist enterprise supported by it's free education for all, supported by tax dollars. It's a place where the community can gather and hang out, have events, mill around. Kids can get educated for free. So the right wing fucking hates it because anything that binds society together is sort of bad, unless it's a church, right? And even then,
well, especially
especially
if it even remotely involves the concept of like learning and expanding your horizons and discovering new things and shit like that. They're definitely going to come after it when you got those factors in play.
Yeah. So to get this off, so a new report came out recently about book banning efforts. From a couple different the reports came from a couple different organizations, one called Pan America and another the American Library Association. But during last school year 21-22, more than 1,600 book titles were banned, according to a new report from Penn, and the American Library Association confirmed that number. Their number was a little bit higher. These are like random psychos filing complaints, right? And when you get pushback from like, hey, maybe this book's fine, you will get fucking death threats, which we're going to get into. One of the books they found that was most often banned was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which I read in high school. And it's about, I'm going to come off the top of my head from the thing I read in high school, but I didn't find it traumatic, right? But it's about a woman who's overcoming like sexual abuse and stuff, who happens to be black, and there's racism. But like, if you can't read a book and still maintain your worldview, then what fuck good is your worldview, right? Like,
I mean, unless your worldview, like, needs to be questioned or brought to task a little bit, which is again one of the things that books are great for. But it's like, I know we're going to talk about a lot of this as we continue to go through this. But yeah, you say you didn't find it traumatic. That's how they couch all this stuff. Is like these books are inappropriate for children because they'll find them discomforting. They don't want to cause discomfort to the kids for these books. But it's like, you know, for if you're a black kid or a queer kid or something, is there not anything inherently uncomfortable about being effectively erased,
Yeah.
or not allowed to exist, never seeing your experience represented? In fact, having it be almost illegal for your experience
Mhm.
to be represented. Like, what kind of message does that send? And it's, it's pretty obvious, but they only care about really one particular type of kid,
Yeah. And also, like, if you
little.
can't, like, if your mind can't, again, if your mind can't stand reading a contrarian idea, like if I read, I've never read Mein Kampf, but I'm willing to bet reading it wouldn't turn me into a fucking Nazi. I had
Right.
to read this for a gig once. I had to read the Satanic Bible. I did not convert. So like I don't understand what these people are so worried about. But let me read this right here. So while we think of book bans as the work of individual concerned citizens, our report demonstrates that today's wave of bans represent a coordinated campaign to banish books being waged by sophisticated, ideological, and well-resourced advocacy organizations. They said the group PAN America has identified at least 50 groups working at all levels advocating for book bans. One of them, which we talked about before, is Moms for Liberty, which was started in 2021. So let's talk about what these coordinated effects look like. This is in Kansas. Kansas town threatens to kick out library after it refused to remove divisive books. This is a small town library supported by county funds, and they've essentially canceled the lease. And they're going to have to move to a different small town in the same region. And this quote was heartbreaking to me. Here's from a St. Mary's resident. This is the town the library is in. Hannah Stockman, a stay-at-home mom looking after 13 kids. It is not clear whether all 13 kids are hers or not, where she runs a little daycare. But she said the move would be devastating for her and others like her. At this point, it's the only space left we have for the public. Um, the book they're worried about, it's called Melissa. They're shutting the whole library over one book. It happens to be about a transgender child. But the library director said that book, they put it on the shelves because it was up for an award in 2017, 2018. It's only been checked out 4 times since they've had it in the
Right.
past 4 years. They defunded an entire county's library and kicked it out of its space because of a book that got checked out 4 fucking times.
Right. It's like the laws about like trans high school athletes and stuff like that. When in some, like I think it was Utah, there's like literally one in the whole state. And I bet you some of the states that are enacting those laws don't even have any actually, playing those sports or, doing the thing that they're so worried about. So this is very in keeping with that. But I will say this also is a theme in these stories we're be talking about, but like props and respect to these various librarians and library staff, because the thing is, the reason this shit is happening is because they're saying, no, fuck that, we're not doing that. Like they get told to remove a book and they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And then they, get threatened with having their lease pulled or their funding stricken or whatever. And they're, they've been holding their ground. So I just want to give them a shout out because
It's not
great.
just they're losing their jobs, like they're getting like death threats. I'm honestly
Right.
surprised one has been murdered. There might have been a shooting I don't know about, but that I didn't see on the news or whatever. But this librarian in Louisiana stood up at a meeting, and Matt's pulling up. I'll get to that in a second. But before we get to this Michigan story, this Louisiana woman, librarians, they were talking about banning books, and she stood up and made the point that like I think banning books is the wrong move. It's not a good sign for society. She apparently went viral on right-wing internet and got nationwide death threats. And now she's scared to leave her house, and her hair started falling out from all the stress. All right, this is what they're fucking dealing with. That the story Matt pulled up is from Michigan. A library in Patmos, a town called Patmos, closed early over safety concerns. They didn't detail what the safety concerns were, but they shut down the library. They were so concerned because of of LBGT books about those issues in the library. The library counted and said that only 90 of its 67,000 titles even were covered by what stuff people were trying to ban. So 0.13% of the library's book offering. So a book that got checked out 4 times got a library shut down in Kansas, and 0.13% of a library's book offerings got death and bomb threats towards this Michigan library got it shut down.
Yeah, well, they'll like, I mean, this is them sending a message loud and clear. They'll gladly just get rid of all the books as long as that means that, basically get rid of the 0.13% of the books that they're actually worried about right now. I mean, isn't surprising, but is very alarming. And it's like, this is another one of those things where it's like I said, just how brazen and involved this stuff is, these moves they make. I bring it up all the time where it's like, I don't understand how you fail to realize that you're the bad guy with some of the stuff that they do, especially like book banning, book burning and everything. It's like the rise of fascism 101, and everybody knows it. One of the most famous sci-fi, allegory ain't the right word, I guess, or maybe it is. I don't know. You know what I mean? Pieces of science fiction social commentary ever made was about this exact thing. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And it's like, it's chapter 1 of the shit chapter 1 of the book on alarming signs from a society, bad harbingers of the future for a society is when you start banning and burning books and shit.
Well, these people are so uptight. I wonder if we could trick them into burning the Bibles by convincing them that when Jesus washed the prostitute's feet, it was his kink.
Well, you remember that guy? There was that one teacher in Florida, which shout out to that guy too, when they had their new law about divisive books or whatever. He submitted a complaint or however you go about it, saying that the Bible should be included because it's very graphic in nature and very violent and all this stuff. And he had actual excerpts, of which there were many, that illustrated his point. Because I mean, why not?
They don't actually read the Bible, which is we're going to come back to in a second. But I want you everybody keep that thought in your head before we get to it. So before we get to that, over in Texas, my old stomping grounds, there's a House committee investigating books in libraries, which is sad enough. But this story was really funny to me because there's this a town called Granbury elected a really right-wing school board. And the superintendent called all the teachers and librarians together and told them they better get on board. And if you have a different political ideology, you better not voice it. So that's cool. And the school board formed a parents committee, a volunteer review committee, after they removed 130 books, which they thought were too gay or whatever, for review. And the volunteer committee looked at the books. These are conservative moms in Granbury, Texas, right? They probably on the church committees and whatever. And they looked at all the books. They said, they're fine. They'll let most of the books go back on the shelf. To which a couple disgruntled members of the committee filed a police report trying to get librarians arrested for giving pornography to kids. So what the fuck? If your other church moms don't agree there's anything wrong with these books, maybe shut the fuck up and consider whether you're wrong.
Well, it's like you were saying earlier. It's like it shows what a very motivated small group of lunatics can accomplish depending on where their focus lies. Because it's the same thing as with the school boards and stuff. There's not as much scrutiny. It's like an easier target for them, seemingly, like you said, if people don't push back. And that's what they're doing with the libraries and the books now.
Yeah, this library in Massachusetts, Dedham, Massachusetts, got threatened with defunding because some psycho noticed they hadn't put up a Christmas tree yet. So they thought it was intentional or whatever. So then they put up a Christmas tree and they're like, okay, well, you can have your funny now. And that's fucking nuts. They just weren't going to put up a tree because they're closed on Christmas.
Or hell, they don't even know they could have they have no idea. The librarian maybe had a lot of other shit to do that week or whatever. They got busy. It slipped their mind. They just didn't get around to it. Who gives a shit? But and then it gets cast as being part of the war on Christmas. But it's wild to just sort of not get around to putting up a Christmas tree and then get effectively get death threats or whatever for trying to cancel Christmas. It's a wild place we're all in.
There's it's not just random psychos too. It's governments. First example here, this town in McFarland, California, which is a small rural agricultural area. The police chief has decided to close the library so he can use the library for his new police station, which is I'm going to quote here from a piece where I read about it. It's such a startling, crushing metaphor for what our society values that you can't even look directly at it.
Yeah, man.
Again, it's this little rural area. These are full of low-wage immigrants where a lot of their reading materials and educational opportunities come from the library. And this local pastor, we're talking about right-wing Christian psychos a lot here. So I do want to shout out this guy. He's a pastor and the kind of Christian I'd want to hang out with. He's the leader of the Friends of the McFarland Library. He told the New York Times, "I view this as a battle for civilization." And absolutely, man. What's the point of uh, yeah? What's the point of being like this? But it's not just small towns. Last week, there was a report that a couple weeks ago, New York City's public libraries are up against a possible multi-billion-dollar budget cut, a multi-billion-dollar budget cut in New York, while they're increasing police funding at an insane rate, while New York remains an extremely safe city.
Yeah, I mean, you said earlier, you call it's like a socialist enterprise. Like, I'm honestly, part of me is kind of surprised they haven't come for libraries before now already. Just because, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, if libraries didn't exist and they got pitched today, oh my God, the outrage and pushback from the right wing would be incredible. But I guess libraries have been served up until now by being one of those places that almost no one doesn't like, or almost nobody hates, at least, but they're finding a way.
Yeah. So librarians do kick an amazing amount of ass. We can talk about that more in a second, and so do teachers. But sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. And I read this story of this Florida English teacher who is trying to ban books from the library. And it's not even really the worst thing about her, because she's also horrifically racist. She's posted Confederate flags to her Facebook page. She said that, quote, "Everyone in my clan fought in the Civil War, and she's not ashamed of that," which, I'm sure some of my ancestors did. I am ashamed of it. So we can just put that out there.
Yeah.
She has openly told her students that she's against interracial marriage. She asked all of her, apparently asked every one of her black students if they can swim. And her anti-interracial marriage views, going back to the thing about they don't actually read the Bible, when somebody asked why she was against interracial marriage, she said that in the Bible somewhere, Trae, it says that it's a sin for races to mix together. Somewhere. She doesn't know where it is. She sort of heard about it. She hasn't read the fucking thing, right? But
they also had a quote from this lady where it was a book she took issue with that featured like a gay kid, or no, it was two male penguins. It's a kid's book with two male penguins who adopt a little penguin penguin baby, and raise it as a happy little family. And she said it was like, using penguins to push the gay agenda or whatever. But she goes on to say something like, I don't remember verbatim, but it was something like, a young child could read that and then know that there's, people like that out there, or something to that effect, and it's like, yeah, but like, it's just saying the quiet part out loud. You know what I mean? It's like, they just don't want them to know. It's like, they'll be made uncomfortable just by learning that these other types of people exist, or that shitty types of people, i.e. racist, have also existed. And it's like, how long is that supposed to go on for? Do you know what I mean? Like, as a parent, when you're talking about kids, like, are they ever going to be all right with them knowing that things exist in the world? Is there a certain cutoff where it's okay to be aware of other things existing, or are they just, go on forever? Because they try to ignore that shit exists all throughout their adulthood. So, I guess there isn't.
They did. Right-wingers all over the world hate libraries. We'll get to Ukraine in a second, because it's an important part of this about librarians being badasses. But the good news here, again, we're talking about a small band of psychos, because the good news here is polls show that the majority of people support libraries and oppose book bans. So the thing is, just like, look up what's happening at your local library is my main takeaway. But let's talk about librarians being kick-ass people for the majority of them. So earlier this year, librarians in Ukraine, if you follow library news closely, which you probably don't, because there's a lot of stuff going on in that war, but they became global symbols of cultural preservation in the face of militarism, fascism, and genocide. Because, like, libraries are keepers of knowledge, but also like keepers of history and archives and stuff. That's sort of like when a society decides to start writing down stuff so future generations can learn from it, that's a cultural statement of value about how learning is important, right? Like, I know anthropologists trace the beginning of civilizations to when they find people with healed, broken bones, because they meant people could care for each other. But also having written language and writing down stuff so people can learn is like, that's an important part of like human development. And
yeah, dude, I would argue it's like the most important part of human development, or close to it. You know what I mean? The fucking written word, that shit changed everything.
Yeah, so one of the things Russia did when they invaded Ukraine, key part of its strategy was to destroy historic libraries, because part of Putin's whole argument for the war is that Ukraine isn't real and Ukrainians don't exist. They're just a subset of Russians. So any book on Ukrainian history is a direct like provocation to him, right? So they were bombing and smashing libraries, and libraries went into action. They knew that shit was going to happen, so they were running around trying to save as much of their archives and books as they could. They also established mobile libraries where they were delivering books for people to read in bomb shelters. One of the things Putin was also trying to remove was books about like Soviet, horrors. They're trying to erase fucking history. So when they want to take a book about slavery or racism out of the library,
Right.
think of it in those terms here.
Exactly. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, same thing Putin's doing in Russia. So this quote, they destroyed a bunch of libraries. I'm trying to find they destroyed the state archives in Chernihiv. I'm going to butcher these things. They ransacked the archives in Bucha. They looted every cultural institution they conquered. They gutted the archival department in Ivankiv. This quote from a Ukrainian librarian who was one of the people delivering books to people in shelters, it's about how libraries aren't a place, they're a spirit of knowledge. He said the libraries follow their readers everywhere. So in Kharkiv, which is very often bombed, a lot of people live in the metro, talking about being in the subway. The library isn't a building, the library is a community. So if you want to know why they want to destroy libraries, so the library is not a building, it's a community. There you go.
There it is. All right. Well, let's get into some questions and comments here, Matt. What do you think? How you feel about that? I know you're not going to respond. I don't know why I'm acting like I expect you to. We all know that producer Matt is the silent observer and facilitator.
Yeah.
A man of mystery.
Well, Matt's looking for comments. I want to shout out the Biden administration for something. They're trying to go to bat to destroy compete clauses, which are horrific abuse. Have you ever been forced to sign one, Trae?
We like with shows, like a geographical radius type of thing. Would that count for what you're talking about? Yeah.
They don't hit. They, to my mind, under capitalism, it should be illegal restraint trade, because if you can sell your product anywhere, why can't I sell my product everywhere, which is my labor, right? So I was reading anecdotes about horrific stories about nurses getting another job at a hospital and instead have to drive 2.5 hours outside of state work. Shit like that. I also have personal anecdotes. Like my wife, a company I've worked for, she as a teaching fitness classes as a side job because she likes helping people. You don't get that feeling from a lot of showbiz stuff, and she likes being able to work out for free and being paid to work out. And they try to hit her with a non-compete because they've paid for her training, but she goes, "No, I paid for my own training. Fuck you." They're like, "Oh well, still, please don't work anywhere else." They're like, "Nope, sorry." It's like, but my friend's wife, she was also trying to teach fitness classes in a small town, and they tried to get her to sign a non-compete agreement for a $25 an hour job. And it's like, who the fuck told you could do this? That no one can compete with you. If I want to start my own dance studio, you can't compete.
I mean, the spirit of competition is like the whole thing, isn't it? Fundamental foundational principle upon which the whole system is built is the importance of competition.
I imagine, hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you, Michelle. Sorry, I know you're trying to get that out there, and I keep interrupting you because I'm passionate about this shit, Trae. Why can't workers ply their fucking trade? I imagine the Supreme Court will strike it down and say to Biden because they're gearing up for a big legal fight. But workers should be able to move jobs. I understand if a corporation pays training, okay, then they have to pay you back for my training if I move to another job. But you don't get to own me as a worker because there's a word for that.
Oh, all right. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Hit the like button, everybody. Subscribe, share, rate, review, all that good internet stuff would be helpful. If you would. And let's see here for Shay Reeves says, I work in a high school library. The job gets harder every day, but I still love it. Yeah, that's good for you. My sons are avid readers, love the library. It's just one of those. Yeah. Judy Kidder Browning says, can you compare and contrast Biden's quote secret documents with Voldemort's stash at Mar-a-Lago?
Hadn't heard Voldemort's before. The Biden's vice presidential library or whatever discovered they had a couple of top secret documents and voluntarily gave them back, and there's going to be an investigation into how they got there or whatever, which is fine, whatever. But yesterday, cable news and CNN was worse than Fox for whatever reason. Went all in on this like it's the biggest. They do this thing where they don't actually report the news. They skip straight to like analysis pieces about how the politics are going to play. And it's like, can you just say what happened first before you skip straight to how this is awful news for Biden because of how it's going to play when you're the one doing the playing?
Right.
So like so having a couple that you accidentally took and voluntarily turning them back over is different from taking stuff on purpose and refusing to give it back even when it's been subpoenaed.
Yeah.
Like it's not the having the documents, it's the refusing to turn it over. The National Archives and the FBI didn't raid Trump's compound until negotiating to try to get their shit back for fucking over a year and a half or whatever. The two things are not remotely the same. But we're heading, this is Hillary's emails all over again. We're at no context or specificity. And this isn't a defense of Hillary Clinton. It's more of like, that was an in the weeds thing about email protocols and how email was used in 2008, who Hillary's husband was, what his job was, why he had a private email server, why she didn't want to carry around 2 cell phones, yada, yada, yada. It's all inane bullshit. And it's everything they want to talk about instead of stuff that's actually happening that matters. I don't care that Trump had the documents. I don't care. Fuck.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, anytime the both sides argument gets brought up, that's often the way it goes, in my opinion. It's like they don't seem entirely equitable to me. Sandy Trunks, guess they've been on the beach, am I right? Says CNN is leaning way to the right to get more of Fox's viewers.
Yeah, they got a new corporate leadership essentially announced they were going to do that, and it's probably a smart business decision because most cable news viewers are old as shit, and they probably lean right wing. So if you want to try to grab them to survive as a viable business enterprise, it's probably the right move. But it's really sad for a society that news is a profit-based business that's spun as entertainment.
Well, yeah, when the shift to it being entertainment, as you alluded to earlier, with like you said, they don't even really report the news; they just skip straight to the take part, the fallout, the drama, and all that. And that whole dynamic is the worst fucking thing that ever happened to the American media landscape. And enemy anemone is
every week. You can't say it. Every week you can't say it.
Every week. I'll get it right one of these weeks. Says CNN now seems to think that it is a good business strategy to get worse than Fox, though that seems like a crowded field right now to try to break into.
Yeah.
And so Aaron Duncan
Chris
says
Licht
something weird is happening with CNN since Chris Licht took over.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, look, I used to work in news, and I always thought it was funny that right wingers thought that like I would get emails accusing me of being part of left wing media, and I'm like a night cops reporter in a like satellite bureau in Arlington, Texas, and there's no meeting, no one told me what to write or what to do. Of course, there's editorial oversight, and they would tell you hey, I think this story is important, but the idea that Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper are taking orders to spin their coverage, it's completely against my mind. The spirit of led people to get into journalism would be. I don't know how this shit works over there, but every journalist I ever work with would be like, fuck you, I quit, because you don't end up being a reporter. Of course, they're not reporters, they're high level TV personalities. It's different. But you don't end up in journalism because you love authority. So I don't understand.
Yeah, but like you said, they're high level personalities and stuff. There's a whole lot of money at play, and that shit changes everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were fucking working the beat for a paper. You know, that's that real shit.
Making $24,000 a year was not enough money to lie about.
Linda Zen says, I'm old as shit, and so are my friends who are also old as shit, and we're left laners. There you go, Mark. Hey, you ought to known that was coming now.
I'm not saying that all
Sorry,
old people are bad. That's not what I'm saying.
We're never saying that.
I'm saying some old people lives matter.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, so listen, as a reminder, go to TraeCrowder.com and check out my dates and my tickets and stuff. Damn, Matt, once again, I got to get you a new graphic. That's all right. We'll get it. Yeah, a lot of fun shit coming up, adding more shows all the time. I hope y'all will come and see me in 2023. And also, if you like this program and you want to support us and get more of us in your life, and who wouldn't, go to weeklyskews.com/more, or you can go on Patreon and look me up. And $5 a month, you get full-length bonus episodes. We have fun with it. And yeah, like, subscribe, rate, and review. I'm glad to be back. Thank y'all for sticking with us through the little tumultuous holiday season that we typically have every year. Should be back on track now, and we'll see you each and every Skews day. So, yeah.
And
So
shout out to
goodbye.
elderly left wingers. We love you. Old hippies rule.
Old hippies